Welcome. Thank you all for coming tonight. Just some quick introductions with Kai and I before we get started. My name is Libby Swan. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Production, spelt PRDXN. It's the disemboweled version of the word production. You can find out more about us by going to our website, which is production.com. And you're more than welcome to talk to me after this chat. Our guest tonight is Kai Yen. Kai is the CTO and co-founder of the company and platform Purple Squirrel. And if you want to look at that on your phones right now, that's purplesquirrel.io. Purple Squirrel enables job seekers to purchase time with real employees to get their foot in the door and learn tips required to get hired quickly. I think the platform is best summarized by its users. So with that, I'm going to read you some quotes from the users on the platform. The following is a quote from a job seeker engaging a Pricewaterhouse employee. AG is absolutely fantastic. Her advice is formulated concisely and is always constructive. Her insights into PwC and recruiting stem from her long career in consulting and recruiting. The following is a quote from a job seeker engaging a Facebook employee. Smart, insightful, and targeted advice, a true pleasure. Highly recommend connecting with BW. These are obviously initials given to these users because part of the platform's promise is to connect you with the actual person to provide guidance. Prior to starting Purple Squirrel, Kai was the CTO at JWT Inside. Kai was with JWT for approximately 20 years.
20 years.
Yep. So we have 30 minutes for our discussion, so I'm going to have David be the timekeeper here, and after which we'll open it up for 15 minutes of Q&A. So Kai, why don't you tell us how you got started with Purple Squirrel?
Sure. So like you mentioned, I was working at JWT Inside, which is part of J. Walter Thompson worldwide, and it's a group within the larger agency that specializes in recruitment, marketing, branding. So we're working for like lots of big clients. I worked on Comcast, Macy's, General Motors, like those type of companies, helping them hire employees. So I really saw that there were so many things that were just broken for all of those clients in very much the same way, that a lot of it wasn't really their fault, but it was some of it stemmed really just from the internet in letting people apply to jobs like so much easier than it used to be. It used to be that there was actually like cost money to apply for a job, right? You'd have to print out your resume on beautiful paper, put a stamp on it, fold it up, mail it somewhere, or at least fax it, right? You had some cost. Now, there's basically zero cost. What's happened with job seekers, their time has kind of evolved into like, they put zero value on it. So when they're looking for a job, they just apply, like crazy. So I saw so many of these same problems with clients, and I really didn't have a great solution to it. We tried many things for clients. We were doing a lot on the branding side, so some of it was just trying to solve some of these problems with messaging, but it wasn't really that, just wasn't working. And I'd already been kind of planning that I wanted to get back to building things. The advertising stuff was super interesting to me, and I loved working in the recruitment space, but I really wanted to get back to sort of like building products, and I built some products internally within the agency, but they just, they weren't really that, I don't know, I felt like it could be a lot better if I could really focus on a single project. And at the same time, my co-founder, John, he had come off a successful, or semi-successful startup. He had exited that, and he was trying to figure out what he was going to do next. And so John decided, and this is funny because if you know John, this is what he does. John decided that he should work at Google. So do 6 million other people, like every year, right? Google gets like a job application every 6 seconds or something funny. So he applied to Google and he got automated rejection. So he applied again, automated rejection. Like, you know how the story goes, right? He did this for like weeks. And so John being John decided, well, I'm gonna find another way in, because he doesn't give up on anything. So he started going through LinkedIn, he started like just chasing like every possible contact he could find. Finally found somebody. 3 weeks later, he has a job at Google. Like, it was simple as that. And that just like stuck in his head. And so he carried that around with him for a few years at Google, and he got the idea, finally he decided like I think he was ready to move on from Google. He got the idea in front of like Laszlo Bock, Eric Schmidt, like some really big leaders there. And they all told him the exact same thing, which is, it's a great idea, you should quit tomorrow and just go start this. And like that was, which was funny, right? Like, and John being John was like, all right, this is a business, I'm leaving, I'm gonna do it, which is great, I love him for it. And we had a mutual friend at the time that John had been in another startup with who introduced us. And I was getting ready to head out and John was getting ready to get this going. He'd already done a little bit of work and sort of that's where it started.
Nice. Can you talk to any key milestones or pivot points you had along the way, or when did you decide it was safe to leave your day job?
Well, fortunately, we haven't had to pivot at all. Like we're still working on the same idea that we started with. Really the biggest milestone we had along the way was raising funding. We knew we needed some money for this. We were raising money we were working on raising money like last spring, which in venture, it was a really tough time for raising seed round. Companies were really tightening up. Like normally for seed round, you're giving out $500,000 to $1.5 million. And it really tightened up a lot. And the companies who were still funding companies, the venture, they were demanding a lot more traction. They were demanding companies that felt more solid, but they were willing to give out more money because they had gotten so tight with the money. So I think ran across, the actual story of getting the money involves like a burrito truck in San Francisco, which is how like, I don't know, basically every story works. Is like, there's always something weird like that, but it was John standing in line at a burrito truck, met somebody who's like, I love that idea. Let me call like my friend over at this like VC right now. Right. And those guys like became our lead investor. Wow. And then helped us like syndicate the round and work through and get others. So that was really just the main milestone for us was raising the money. And that's when, for me, it was good to leave, find to leave a job.
Right. Well, that answers a question, when did investment dollars come in? Has that been the only round of investment dollars that you've raised today?
Well, so we raised a seed round basically it closed, I think, in June of last year. So just about a year. We've got like 3 investors, which has been really great because they're very, very different from each other and sort of all came together to fund the round. We did take some later money from 500 startups. Okay. They made an investment as part of another program, but it was really just the one round.
How has the experience been with regards to taking investment dollars in terms of working with investors and their expectations of you as a business?
Our experience has been it's been really great. Okay. There are a lot of people who talk about their horror stories with having, I guess what you could call like amateur investors, okay, who don't really understand the risks that are involved in a startup, right, and don't realize that you're going to fund for every probably 20 or 30 companies you fund, right, one of them is going to survive maybe. Right. So the odds are against all of these companies, and our investors are all institutional investors who are like understand that. And what's been really great is we have 3 who are like very different. We have one who led our round, who's just a few blocks up the street. And we can walk up there and hang out with them. They come by our place, and like we do a team Thursday barbecue. They come by and have hang out with us. So they're sort of like, they were the ones who kind of put it together. And then we've got one tiny investor who's really involved, right, and he loves to come by. I think he really loves it because we're right in Venice, like right at Venice Beach, and we have a garage. So he parks at the beach. He has like a 10-minute meeting with us, and then he like walks off for like 3 hours like on the beach. So I think he's kind of like using us a little bit in that way, but he's such a fun guy. And
is he an angel investor? He
came in as part of the seed. So he made like the biggest. He actually made, I think this was like one of the biggest investments he made in a company. But he's terrific because he's really involved, and he loves to just like talk with us about how things are going. And then on the other side, we have another investor that's really big. And they're the one where, if you just tell them what you need, and they have some vendor that's going to provide some like gigantic discount. And that vendor is like Delta Airlines, or like it's these huge companies that can give us like all kinds of things. Like that investor, like, they snapped their fingers and made everybody in our company gold medallion on Delta.
Nice.
Like, I didn't even know that they do that. But it sure paid off. Like, it's been great.
You were somehow involved with 500 startups.
Yeah, so most people know, if anybody knows 500 startups, most people know them for their, they do a seed program. It's almost like, maybe it's even earlier than seed. It's basically like an incubator program where they make an investment in your company that is essentially enough to like get super cheap rent and eat ramen for a year. Like that's really what they give you. I mean, we're talking about, I think they put in maybe $120,000 in a company. They're expecting you have something built, but just barely. Right. And then they help you get it finished, start getting traction, and try to like see if there's something there. And then at the end of the program, if it does seem like there's something there, they make intros to investors, and then it grows from there. And they take a percentage of your company for that. So that's not what we did. When we met up with them, we had already closed our seed round. We were like a few months into that. They have a post-seed, like pre-Series A program that they call I think they may have changed the name, but it was called the Growth Dojo. And I know it's a funny name. The whole gist of it was just growth. Like, how do you actually grow your business? So they're trying to like take you from seed to Series A. And I think the idea was that's what they would do with all those companies that actually, after they closed their seed round that they were a part of, they would then use this program to sort of accelerate them to the next level. But I don't know if I don't know why they wanted us in it, but they were kind of like chased us down for that money. So they make an investment. It's a little bit of a bigger investment, and then they put us through a growth program, which actually was really cool.
Yeah. And that growth program, is there any like major key takeaways or things that you've held on to and you're like, oh wow, if we didn't go through that growth program, we wouldn't have found out about that, or we wouldn't have thought about that?
Yeah, one of the main things that's great about the program is they really connect you with just these amazing, experienced founders who have been through kind of like everything you've been through before. Nice. So you can run ideas by them, and their answers to, it's funny because any question you ask them about, hey, we're thinking about doing this, we're thinking about doing that, they have an answer that's usually, that is a terrible idea, you should absolutely not try that, or like, we've seen other people do it, and this was the result. Like, it was positive. So they give us like really clear answers on those kind of things. But they also had they have a bit of their own kind of system for how companies should think about growth, and it's all focused around something they call the one metric that matters. And so they kind of force you to pick this like one metric, and to kind of get everybody aligned behind that metric, and then run these like weekly growth meetings where you're basically looking at like, how did we move that metric, and like, what are we doing next week to move that metric, and just holding everybody accountable for their piece of moving that one thing forward. So that actually was really good. There's a lot of focus, I think, that we got out of it. And I think that like the one thing that taught me, possibly more than anything else, was that like I knew that I needed to be really focused going into this. I knew that was going to be like the most important piece of success. I totally underestimated how hard that was, and like over and over and over again, like using kind of their program sort of keeps getting us like back on track. And it is still hard to stay focused. Like, no matter how much I know that we have to stay focused on that, it's still hard, and it's still like a struggle to do that. So that was a lot harder than I expected.
Are you able to share with us that one metric that you guys have?
Oh, for our metric, yeah, it's unique people who completing engagements on our platform.
Okay. And then what do you find are the biggest distractions for you today with regards to staying on track with that one metric?
Oh, it's everything. Like, well, the thing is, like, I heard somebody, I don't know where I heard this, but this it made me laugh when I heard it, and then when I realized it was true and we were living it, like, I really was laughing hysterically. But I heard somebody say, like, when you're like an idea person, right? You come up with ideas, and usually companies are started by idea people, right? They have ideas, and usually they don't just have one; they've got like 1,000, right? And so you take like a founder who's like an idea person, and usually they connect with other idea people, right? And pretty soon you have all these ideas. And then what you do is you think like, okay, we just landed some funding, right? This is great, because we're going to hire a whole bunch of people, and now we can actually execute on this. And your natural inclination is to go find these like exceptionally smart people, and you bring them into the organization, and guess what? They have ideas, like more ideas than they have like bandwidth to do them. So the ideas don't actually get executed, and you don't feel like your list of things is getting smaller, it just explodes. And that's that sort of focus piece, because you keep hearing these like amazing ideas all the time. And when you're together, they just multiply. Right. And it's really hard to just stay focused and not try to change what you're doing, and not what you're focused on, which is that one metric that matters for us.
So if I could summarize the distraction, it's really when you get a group of smart people together, they can't help themselves from ideating as opposed to staying fixated on the one metric.
Absolutely. You just do that all the time.
Yeah. How many users do you have on the platform today?
So I can't share exact numbers, but what I can say is we have our advocates, who are the people who have great jobs, who love to help the job seekers who come on our platform. That group numbers in the thousands. Okay. So we represent, we have like several thousand companies represented by those folks. And then the job seekers who come through as users, that's a funny number in this whole industry, because you're looking for a job and you're an active user, and then when you have a job, like you're not. Right. So they kind of come and go through, but we've had essentially like tens of thousands come through our platform. Like that's the kind of like rough metric where we are.
Why did you settle on the word advocates for employees?
Oh, yeah, that was super fun. So we started with different names. It is so hard, and when you have all these, when you have idea people, you can imagine like what happens when you get in a room and you try to decide on this. So we used to call them ambassadors, and we went through like some painful exercises to arrive at that name, but we realized at some point that because our advocates are essentially like they're independent advisors, they're not like official representatives of their company, that ambassador was a bit of a misleading term. And not only did we not want job seekers to come on the platform to like misunderstand that these are not official representatives, but we also didn't want companies to feel like we're representing them officially when we're not. Like that was a key thing. And so we went through this naming exercise to rename them. I wish I knew you were gonna ask me that question, or maybe I didn't think about it, because I would have brought some of the ridiculous names that we came up with, because there were so many ridiculous ones.
Right. My bad.
I know there was like acorn hunters because of the squirrel thing. Like they were like they're just ridiculous. It was a fun exercise, but we picked that new name in 15 minutes. Okay. So we decided like we have to pick a name. Somebody had a process for doing it that was it was like no holds barred. Anybody can say anything that they want, and you sort of rotate people taking turns of like writing everything you hear on the board, and you could say anything. And some of them were like completely obscene, even names, but the funny thing about it is like even like completely ridiculous things sometimes spark ideas in other people's heads. So the rule is like anything goes, and you just keep writing things down and then narrow it down. But so that it came through like a funny exercise.